Have you ever wondered what could happen when the most powerful tech CEO in the country faces a total system crash, and the only person who can save the company is a 15-year-old pizza delivery boy? In the middle of a corporate meltdown, surrounded by arrogant executives, young Jamal calmly says, "Your credentials didn't stop the breach." But how does a teenager with no formal title end up outsmarting billion-dollar professionals? And what happens when they try to take him down? Trust me, you won't believe how this story twists. Dear viewer, if you are watching my story for the first time, I humbly request you write the location from where you are watching right now, subscribe this channel and press the bell icon now not to miss the notifications of my daily published new stories. Thank you, and let's dive into the full story. The Titan Tech headquarters gleamed like a glass and steel monolith in the heart of downtown Chicago. On the 54th floor, behind 2-inch thick frosted doors, CEO Eleanor "Ellie" Travers paced back and forth. At 50 years old, Eleanor wore power like a second skin. Her sharp navy suit was tailored to perfection, her platinum blonde hair pulled into a tight bun. Around her, a sea of senior executives, mostly white, mostly male, scrambled to calm her. It was 9:03 a.m., and the unimaginable had happened. The entire Titan Tech global server network had crashed. Not a single client system was functional. Across the globe, banks, hospitals, governments, and Fortune 500 companies relying on Titan Tech's cloud infrastructure were blind and paralyzed. Ellie's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "How does this happen? We're the best. The best." Nobody dared to speak. Then Greg Stanton, the oily vice president of engineering, cleared his throat. "It's the mainframe core. We think, well, we don't know for sure, but we think it might be ransomware." Think? Eleanor shot back. Her eyes flashed with fury. "I'm paying you $800K a year to think. Fix it. I have a call with the Pentagon in 1 hour." Tension rose like a tidal wave. The CTO, an arrogant Brit named Nigel Harper, leaned back in his chair. "Ellie, even if it is ransomware, the decryption won't be trivial. We need to isolate the breach and rebuild. That could take days." Eleanor whirled on him. "Days? Are you trying to tank this company?" Outside the glass walls of the executive war room, the entire IT department buzzed with nervous energy. Analysts typed furiously, trying to trace the attack. Programmers in branded Titan Tech polos argued over possible entry points. The stress hung thick in the air. Then came a knock at the glass door. Everyone turned. A young black boy, barely 15, stood in the doorway wearing a red hoodie and carrying 2 stacked pizza boxes. His name tag read, Jamal Watson. He was from the local Pizza Heaven 2 blocks away. Eleanor's assistant cracked open the door. "Now's not the time, someone ordered lunch for the executive suite," Jamal said. His voice was even, calm. He scanned the room full of frantic professionals. "I got 2 large Supremes and breadsticks." "Are you serious?" Eleanor spat. "We're in crisis mode. Get that boy out of here." Greg laughed coldly. "See yourself out, kid. This isn't the cafeteria." Jamal's brown eyes flicked to the giant touchscreen behind Eleanor, which still blinked red with cascading system failures. His brow furrowed. "Your firewall's down," he said quietly. Eleanor's mouth twisted in irritation. "Excuse me? Your outbound traffic's maxed out, but your firewall's not throttling. You're pushing packets on port 3389. Remote desktop." The room went still. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Nigel sneered. "Cute. Go home, little man. Leave this to professionals." But Jamal didn't budge. "You've got a Russian botnet tunneling through your East Coast data center." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "How do you know that?" Jamal shrugged. "You're leaking traffic to a mirror site in St. Petersburg. DNS spoof. If you don't patch your BGP routes, they'll keep rerouting your global clients." Nigel scoffed. Ridiculous. There's no way a pizza boy could know that. But Greg's face had gone pale. Wait. St. Petersburg. I just saw something weird on the Netmon logs. He rushed to a terminal and began typing. Jamal set the pizza boxes down on the nearest table and walked up to the touchscreen. May I? He asked. Eleanor hesitated. Who are you? Jamal Watson. I'm 15. I built my own distro based on Linux Mint. I run a neighborhood server for streaming movies. I follow security feeds. Nigel laughed. Security feeds. How quaint. But Greg looked up again, this time panicked. Ellie, he's right. There's a route leak. Russia-based IPs. Jamal reached into his pocket and pulled out an old Android phone with a cracked screen. If you give me 10 minutes on your terminal, I can show you how they're tunneling through your DNS. You'll need to scrub the routes and block the C2 channels. Eleanor was torn between disbelief and desperation. The Pentagon was calling in less than an hour. The entire system was hemorrhaging. And now, a 15-year-old pizza boy was calmly telling her how to stop it. For the first time in her career, Eleanor Travers felt completely out of control. And somewhere deep in her gut, she knew the boy might be her only shot. Greg, she said tightly. Give the kid a terminal. Nigel sputtered. This is insane, do it. Eleanor barked. Greg slid a terminal over to Jamal. The boy pulled out a USB drive from his hoodie pocket and plugged it in. His fingers flew across the keys as he bypassed the lockdown admin console with ease. The room watched in stunned silence as lines of code streamed across the screen. Routing tables, here. You've got spoofed AS paths. And, there's your C2. See that? Russian IP block. Jamal typed faster, isolating the malicious traffic and dumping it into a log. He opened another terminal window and began generating new route filters. Block those prefixes, he said. It won't clean the whole infection, but it'll stop the bleeding. Greg looked at the screen. He's right. Those are the rogue prefixes. Eleanor's breath caught. Could this kid really be saving her company? Jamal pressed one final key. The main touchscreen blinked. Red error messages began turning amber, then green. Connections restored. Clients reconnecting. Across the floor, engineers began shouting. It's working. Someone yelled. We're coming back online. In the silence that followed, all eyes turned to Jamal. The 15-year-old pizza boy stood calmly by the terminal, the glow of the screen lighting his face. Eleanor Travers, corporate titan, took a long, shaky breath. Who are you? She whispered. And in that moment, no one dared to laugh at him again. The digital hum of servers stabilizing echoed through the Titan Tech headquarters. After hours of terrifying system failure, the company's global network was breathing again. Messages poured in from clients, some relieved, others furious. But inside the executive war room, no one was speaking. Eleanor Travers stared at the 15-year-old boy who had just averted catastrophe. Jamal Watson. Pizza delivery boy. Hoodie-clad, old sneakers, carrying a cracked Android. In a room full of Ivy League degrees and million-dollar salaries, he now stood at the center of everyone's attention. Nigel Harper broke the silence. This is absurd. He must have triggered something. This could have been a lucky guess. Jamal calmly unplugged his USB drive. It wasn't a guess. You had a DNS leak. I just patched your route filters to block malicious redirects. Nigel's nostrils flared. A pizza boy thinks he knows better than trained cybersecurity professionals. That is laughable. Greg Stanton wasn't laughing. Nigel, the routes were rogue. Exactly what he said. We should have caught it. I didn't even think to check BGP leaks. Nigel snapped, he could have planted something himself. Where's the audit trail? You want the audit logs? Jamal asked, pulling up a terminal window. Here. No elevated privileges, no system calls beyond diagnostics and routing commands. I left the log timestamps untouched. Greg checked the screen. He's telling the truth. But Nigel refused to back down. This is unacceptable. You let an unscreened teenager access our core systems. Eleanor, this could be a PR nightmare. A lawsuit. We can't have random children hacking into Titan Tech. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. He didn't hack in, Nigel. He saved us. That's your version, Nigel said coldly. But imagine the headlines, Titan Tech has billion-dollar security fixed by a pizza boy. We'll be the laughingstock of the industry. Across the room, the other executives murmured uneasily. They weren't ready to give credit where it was due. Jamal's jaw tightened, but he stayed composed. You don't have to give me credit. I was just trying to help. At that moment, the boardroom doors burst open. In walked Martin DeWitt, the chairman of the board, a heavy-set man in a pinstripe suit, face red with anger. What the hell is going on? I've got the Pentagon calling my cell. Eleanor stepped forward. Martin, the immediate crisis is contained. We had a route leak, foreign actors tunneling through our DNS. It's been stopped. Martin's eyes swept the room and landed on Jamal. Who is this? Nigel immediately jumped in. An unscreened civilian who somehow accessed our internal systems. This whole thing could blow up in our faces. Martin scowled. Is that true? Jamal stood his ground. I was delivering pizza. I noticed the firewall issue. They permitted me to help. Martin looked at Eleanor sharply. You let a child touch our systems. Eleanor's voice was cold steel. He understood the breach better than my team. Martin turned back to Jamal. What's your name, son? Jamal Watson. And how old are you? 15. Martin's expression twisted. 15. Incredible. And you expect me to believe this wasn't some kind of stunt? Jamal met his gaze. I don't care what you believe. I just fixed your leak. Silence fell again. It was the wrong thing to say to the board chairman. Martin's face darkened. Young man, I suggest you watch your tone. You're not in the streets here. Eleanor's stomach turned. The condescension was blatant. But before she could speak, Nigel added, we can't have someone like him, without credentials, anywhere near our infrastructure. He could have caused more harm than good. Jamal's voice stayed level. Your credentials didn't stop the breach. The insult landed. Nigel's face flushed. That's enough. Get this kid out of here. Martin folded his arms. We'll handle this internally. Eleanor, get him out before someone takes a photo. The last thing we need is headlines about pizza boys running Titan Tech. Eleanor's instincts screamed in protest. But she was boxed in, surrounded by arrogant men more concerned with optics than substance. She exhaled slowly. Jamal. Thank you. But for now, I need you to go. Jamal's lips pressed into a thin line. He picked up his empty pizza carrier, glanced once more at the blinking monitors, and turned toward the door. Greg Stanton called after him quietly. Hey, kid. You really know your stuff. Jamal didn't answer. He walked out of the room, past rows of watching employees, many sneering, some wide-eyed with admiration. Down in the lobby, Jamal pushed through the revolving doors and into the humid Chicago afternoon. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from anger. They'd dismissed him. Disrespected him. He pulled out his phone and opened a terminal app. One line of code later, he was watching Titan Tech's traffic metrics from a public mirror. Just to make sure they stayed clean. Arrogant fools, he muttered. They don't even know what's still coming. Inside the war room, Eleanor was silent as Martin and Nigel began planning the narrative, how to spin the outage, bury the embarrassing truth, and keep Jamal's name out of any reports. But deep down, Eleanor knew the real story wasn't over. And Jamal Watson wasn't finished yet. The following morning, Titan Tech buzzed with nervous energy. The system might have been back online, but the leadership team remained shaken. Overnight, Eleanor had barely slept. The Pentagon had postponed their meeting, insisting on a full incident report before rescheduling. Dozens of clients were demanding explanations. Worst of all, Titan Tech's once impeccable reputation had taken a visible hit. Rumors of the outage had already leaked online. In the sleek 54th floor boardroom, Eleanor sat stiffly at the head of the table. The senior execs, Greg Stanton, Nigel Harper, and a handful of others, had gathered for a crisis debrief. Greg opened his laptop. We traced the entry point. It was a compromised vendor account, one of the contractors installing IoT sensors last month. From there, they escalated privileges, injected a route leak, and rerouted traffic through Russian servers. Nigel scoffed. Child's play. We should have caught it. Greg gave him a sharp look. We didn't, Jamal Watson did. Nigel bristled. I've already spoken to legal. We cannot mention him in any official reports. It would make us look incompetent. Do you want Titan Tech to become the laughingstock of Silicon Valley? Eleanor's jaw clenched. I want the truth, Nigel. The truth matters. But Martin DeWitt, sitting at the far end of the table, raised a pudgy hand. No. Nigel is right. We bury this. We tell the board it was an internal response. The pizza boy angle is unacceptable. Greg started to protest, but Eleanor cut him off. For now, fine. But the deeper problem is this: why didn't our team catch the leak in time? No one answered. Before Eleanor could press the issue, her assistant slipped into the room and whispered in her ear. You need to see this. She followed the assistant down the hall to her private office, where a massive curved monitor displayed an open Reddit thread titled, Titan Tech Breach, The Inside Story. The first post was simple: their routing was compromised through a DNS mirror in St. Petersburg. Their East Coast data center still isn't fully patched. Clients beware. It was signed, *Anonymous. But the style of the post made her gut twist. The clean technical breakdown, the deadpan tone, this had to be Jamal. And worse, he was right. The patch rollout Greg had started the night before wasn't complete. Eleanor turned to her assistant. Get Greg in here. Now. 5 minutes later, Greg stood in her office, pale-faced. It's accurate. We didn't finish the East Coast patch. The leak isn't active anymore, but the vulnerabilities are still there. Eleanor's mind raced. If this leaks wider, our stock will tank. Greg nodded grimly. We need that kid back. Martin and Nigel will never allow it, Eleanor said bitterly. They want him erased from the narrative. At that moment, her phone buzzed. An encrypted text popped up from an unknown number: your patches are incomplete. They'll be back. If you want help, you know how to reach me, there was no signature. But again, Eleanor knew. Jamal. She stared at the message for a long moment. Then, with a resigned breath, she typed, "Where are you?" Seconds later, a reply, back at Pizza Heaven. Ask for Jamal, Meanwhile, 2 floors below in legal, Nigel paced furiously. We need to cover ourselves. If that boy posts again, we'll have a PR disaster. Find out who he is. Shut him up if we must. Martin nodded coldly. Quiet money, if necessary. No paper trail. Greg overheard the conversation as he passed. His stomach churned. These men had no shame. And if they thought Jamal would be easily silenced, they were in for a shock. Later that afternoon, Eleanor slipped out of Titan Tech without her usual entourage. Dressed in a plain coat and sunglasses, she walked 2 blocks to the tiny storefront of Pizza Heaven. Inside, the air smelled of garlic and melted cheese. Behind the counter, Jamal was folding boxes, earbuds in. She approached quietly. "Jamal." He looked up, calm but unsurprised. "I figured you'd come." Eleanor sat at the counter. "You were right. The patches aren't done. The system's still vulnerable." Jamal wiped his hands on a towel. "They're probably already watching again. You think one leak is the end? That's not how it works. The minute they saw your weakness, they started planning phase 2. Eleanor's voice dropped. "I need your help. But Martin and Nigel, they're trying to bury this. If they find out I came here, it'll get ugly." Jamal tilted his head. "So why risk it?" She met his gaze. "Because I care more about saving this company than saving my ego." Jamal considered for a moment. "All right. But if I do this, we do it my way. No cover-ups. No lies." Eleanor hesitated, then nodded. "Deal." Unseen by either of them, a black SUV idled outside. Inside, 2 private security men hired by Martin snapped photos of the meeting. One of them sent a text, *CEO meeting with kid at Pizza Heaven. Possible leverage, the real game had just begun. And Jamal Watson was about to turn their world upside down. The next morning, Titan Tech's gleaming headquarters were awash with tension once more. Eleanor arrived early, her mind racing with the conversation from the night before. Jamal was right, the first attack was only the opening move. There was no telling when or where the next strike would come. Yet inside the war room, Martin and Nigel were spinning a false sense of security. "Our clients believe the issue is resolved," Nigel declared confidently to the executive team. "The board is satisfied with our report. There's no further need to involve outside help." Eleanor's lips pressed into a thin line. "It's not about appearances. Our East Coast data centers are still exposed. They'll hit us again. Harder." Martin waved her off. "Speculation. The optics are more important now. Stockholders want stability, not another panic." Greg Stanton, unusually quiet, glanced at Eleanor but said nothing. He knew she was right. They were making a fatal mistake. Then, at precisely 9:37 a.m., every screen in the 54th floor war room flickered. The lights dimmed, and a new message appeared on the central display: Phase 2 initiated. "You should have listened." A chill swept the room. Greg scrambled to his terminal. "It's not local. It's coming through the backup fiber lines, West Coast mirror servers." Nigel's confidence drained from his face. "Impossible. Those were isolated." Greg shouted, "Not anymore. They're in. And it's worse this time, this is an active C2, not just a leak." Red error messages flooded the displays. In seconds, regional clients in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Seattle were going dark. Titan Tech's prized redundancy system was collapsing. Martin's voice shook. "Get it under control. Now." But Greg was already dialing Eleanor's office line. "We need him back." She answered on the first ring. "I know. I'm on it." Across the city, inside Pizza Heaven, Jamal Watson had been monitoring public network traffic on his phone when the first West Coast alerts pinged. He frowned. The attackers weren't amateurs. They'd switched tactics, using encrypted channels disguised as legitimate traffic. Someone had studied Titan Tech's architecture closely. Before he could act, the door burst open. 2 security men in suits strode in, flashing private investigator badges. "Jamal Watson," one asked gruffly. "We need to speak with you." Jamal's boss, Mr. Chen, stepped out from the back. "What is this?" "He's just a delivery boy." One of the men said coldly, "He's a hacker. We have evidence." Jamal stood his ground. No, you don't. But you can tell Martin DeWitt this isn't going to work. Before the men could grab him, another voice rang out from the doorway, sharp, commanding. Touch him and you'll answer to me. Eleanor Travers stood there in her tailored coat, her eyes blazing. He's under my protection. Step aside. The two men hesitated. Their orders hadn't accounted for direct CEO involvement. After an uncomfortable pause, they retreated. Eleanor turned to Jamal. It started again. They're hitting us hard. Jamal nodded. Saw it 10 minutes ago. They're using polymorphic payloads now, changing signatures faster than your scanners can keep up. She gestured urgently. I need you at HQ. Now. My team's lost. Mr. Chen gave a wary nod. Go. Just be careful. Minutes later, a black sedan, personally driven by Eleanor, raced through Chicago streets toward Titan Tech. Jamal rode in the passenger seat, laptop open, fingers flying. Inside the war room, Greg was barely holding the fort. They're flooding West Coast with fake DNS responses. We can't block fast enough. Nigel snapped, where is the CEO? But before anyone could answer, the doors flew open. Eleanor strode in, Jamal on her heels. The exec stared in disbelief. Nigel's face turned red. You brought him back. Are you mad? Eleanor ignored him. Greg, give him a terminal. Full root access. Nigel shouted, that's insane. I won't allow, I'm CEO, Eleanor cut him off. Do it. Reluctantly, Greg slid a terminal over. Jamal plugged in and began working. His screen came alive with activity, analyzing packet flows, tracing attack vectors, scripting dynamic firewall responses. This is adaptive malware, he muttered. Every time you block a signature, it morphs. You need behavioral heuristics, not static rules. Greg watched in awe. He's right, our tools can't keep up with this. Nigel seethed. You're giving him keys to the kingdom. If this goes wrong, you'll answer for it, but even as he spoke, Jamal's rapid-fire commands began to take effect. Network graphs stabilized. Outbound traffic normalized. The screen shifted from red to amber. Clients on the West Coast began reconnecting. Slowly, but surely. Finally, after 20 agonizing minutes, Greg leaned back. We're holding. For now. Jamal looked up. They'll try again. But now they know someone's watching. The room was dead silent. Then Eleanor spoke, her voice low but firm. I want this young man given an official consultant badge. Effective immediately. Nigel sputtered. You can't, I can. And I will. You can either help or step aside. Martin, watching from the corner, said nothing. But behind cold eyes, he was already plotting. This boy was now a threat to his power, his image, his entire grip on Titan Tech. He wouldn't tolerate that for long. And Jamal Watson had just made himself a target. For the first time in days, the Titan Tech network held steady. The West Coast servers hummed with restored stability, thanks largely to Jamal's rapid intervention. Eleanor had kept her word. Within the hour, Jamal was officially entered into the system as a temporary cybersecurity consultant. His ID badge was hastily printed and hung around his neck, Jamal Watson, special technical consultant, but not everyone was happy. Martin DeWitt paced in his private office, red-faced. A 15-year-old consultant, he spat to Nigel Harper, who sat across from him with equal scorn. Nigel shook his head. It's madness. If word gets out, the board will crucify her. A child running critical systems? Insanity. Martin's expression darkened. And what happens when he decides he wants more? Blackmail? Fame? A book deal? He slammed his palm on the desk. No. This ends now. Nigel leaned in. What are you suggesting? Martin's lips curled into a thin smile. We'll dig hard. He must have something in his background, priors, illegal activity, school hacking, anything. If not, we plant it. The moment we discredit him, we can boot him and restore order. Nigel nodded slowly. I'll have my people start tonight. Meanwhile, unaware of the vultures circling, Jamal worked deep inside the 54th floor operations center. His hoodie was pushed back, his young face serious and focused. Greg Stanton hovered nearby, watching the boy work with growing respect. You ever think about doing this for real? Greg asked quietly. Jamal didn't look up. I am doing it for real. Greg smiled. Fair enough. I meant professionally. Not as a pizza delivery kid. You're the best mind I've seen in this building. Jamal's fingers flew across the keys. Doesn't matter how good you are. They see skin first. Greg's face flushed. Yeah. I know how this place can be. He hesitated. For what it's worth, not everyone hears like that. Jamal glanced at him briefly. We'll see. Just then, Eleanor entered the room. Jamal. Walk with me. Together, they crossed into her private office. She shut the door behind them. There's something you need to know, she said. Martin and Nigel are already plotting against you. They'll do whatever they can to discredit you. Jamal's eyes narrowed. Figures. Eleanor handed him a phone. Encrypted line. Use this from now on. And don't go anywhere alone. Jamal smirked. You expecting them to send a hit squad? Not a joke, she said seriously. Reputation, credibility, once they smear you, you'll never work again. I've seen them do it. Jamal pocketed the phone. Let them try. At that moment, in a dark office 2 floors below, Nigel's hired team worked feverishly. They scoured Jamal's online history, ran background checks, and even hacked into the local school district's records. He's clean, one analyst muttered. Top grades, no trouble at school, no record. Everyone's got a skeleton, Nigel growled. Keep digging. Hours later, a break came, not real dirt, but an opportunity to fabricate it. They found an old defunct message board where someone had used the name Jamal W13 and posted about bypassing school Wi-Fi restrictions. Harmless stuff from when Jamal was barely 13. Good enough, Nigel said. Spin it. Make it look like he was hacking public systems. Leak it to the right blogs. By midnight, a headline began circulating in shadowy corners of the tech world, * Pizza Boy hacker, teen linked to illegal network intrusions. * When Greg saw the post early the next morning, he rushed straight to Eleanor. They're smearing him already, he said breathlessly. Eleanor's face hardened. Martin and Nigel. Greg nodded. Has to be. Jamal arrived minutes later, cool and unbothered despite the brewing storm. Saw the posts, he said. They're sloppy. Eleanor frowned. Still dangerous. Enough people believe it, and I can't protect you. Jamal shrugged. I don't need protecting. I need full access. She blinked. Full access. If I'm going to keep your systems clean, I need root. Across all data centers. Greg inhaled sharply. That's unprecedented. Eleanor looked Jamal dead in the eye. If I do this, you'll have every enemy in this building, and beyond. I already do, Jamal replied. But if I don't have what I need, next time we won't stop them. After a long pause, Eleanor nodded. You'll have it. Greg, make it happen. As Greg hurried out, Eleanor leaned closer. Jamal, they're coming for you harder now. You sure you're ready? The young prodigy smiled faintly. They're not ready for me. And somewhere deep in Titan Tekka's vast digital heart, the next threat was already stirring. The Black Hat wasn't done. And neither was Jamal Watson. The following morning, Titan Tekka's massive Network Operations Center, NOC, was a hive of activity. Rumors of Jamal's return had spread through the ranks. Engineers, analysts, and technicians cast sideways glances as the young prodigy entered, hoodie up, new ID badge gleaming. Some whispered behind their screens. Others watched with grudging respect. Greg Stanton met him at the entrance. "We've prepped your access. Full root clearance across all core systems." He hesitated. "You understand, this is more power than anyone here has ever had." Jamal nodded. "I understand." Greg dropped his voice. "They'll fight you harder for it now. Nigel's already trying to block it through the board." Jamal's eyes stayed calm. "Then we move fast." Together, they walked into the heart of the NOC, a giant oval room lined with curved screens and blinking monitors. In the center sat Titan Tekka's primary interface, a massive console controlling the global cloud infrastructure. Jamal took a seat at the terminal, hands poised over the keys. His mind was already racing ahead. The last attack had taught him one thing: the adversary wasn't just testing weaknesses, they were probing him. He leaned toward Greg. "This wasn't a random group. They knew your architecture. Your fallback pathways. Even your admin habits." Greg frowned. "You think it's an inside job?" Jamal's fingers began to move, opening diagnostic windows, tracing log histories, isolating anomalies. "If not inside, someone with close intel. This isn't some teenage hacker crew. It's professional." As he worked, Eleanor entered quietly. Nigel and Martin had spent the morning in board meetings, pushing hard to have Jamal's clearance revoked. For now, she'd kept them at bay. But the clock was ticking. "Find anything yet?" she asked softly. Jamal didn't look up. "They're in your edge devices. Not your servers, your switches. That's why your scans missed them." Greg's jaw dropped. "They're tunneling through the hardware layer?" "Firmware backdoors," Jamal confirmed. "Very sophisticated. Only one or two groups in the world could pull this off." Eleanor's throat tightened. "Nation state?" Jamal nodded grimly. "Almost certainly." At that moment, across the building, Nigel Harper burst into Martin's office. "He's digging into the core hardware now. If he finds those legacy vendors you signed off on, it'll be a scandal." Martin's face darkened. "Then stop him. I don't care how." Back in the NOC, Jamal's eyes flicked across rapidly changing diagnostic screens. "There. I found the persistence layer. They embedded a control channel inside the update cycle of your IoT management framework." Greg inhaled sharply. "That's genius. And terrifying." Eleanor stepped closer. "Can you block it?" "Not block," Jamal said. "Burn it." Without hesitation, he began writing a custom script, an aggressive purge that would not only sever the attacker's connection but erase the compromised firmware pathways. It was risky. One mistake and whole regions of Titan Tekka's infrastructure could go dark. Greg whispered, "You're sure about this?" Jamal's fingers didn't slow. "If we don't, they'll be back. Stronger." As he typed the final command, an alert popped onto his screen: "Unauthorized login attempt detected, admin." Harper and Jamal's eyes narrowed. "They're trying to lock me out." Greg cursed. "Nigel." Jamal's voice stayed calm. "No time. I'll finish before he reaches me." Outside, Nigel stormed down the hallway, phone pressed to his ear. "Revoke his clearance now. Terminate his session." But before the order could go through, Jamal's script executed. Across the global network, a cascade of updates triggered, cleansing the compromised devices, rewriting the firmware, severing the hidden channels. The central monitors flashed bright green. Threat neutralized. Persistence layer eradicated, ****. The NOC erupted in cheers. Engineers high-fived. Analysts gaped in awe. Even the skeptics were forced to admit, the Pizza Boy had just done what the entire Titan Tech team could not. At that moment, Nigel burst into the NOC. He pointed an accusatory finger. "This is outrageous. Unauthorized actions." "Reckless," Eleanor cut him off, voice ringing with authority. "Silence, Nigel. He just saved your career." Nigel sputtered, but the room had turned. The tide of respect was shifting. Jamal stood slowly, unplugging his drive. "Your network is clean. For now." Greg shook his head in amazement. "Kid, you're a legend." But Jamal's gaze was distant. "They're not done. And neither am I." Meanwhile, in a dim conference room, Martin slammed his fist on the table. "He's humiliated us. If we don't crush him soon, he'll own this company's future." Nigel wiped sweat from his brow. "I'll handle it. Personally." But across Titan Tech's gleaming towers, the story was already spreading. Jamal Watson wasn't just a pizza boy anymore. He was the sharpest mind in the building. And the old guard knew their grip was slipping. Jamal sat quietly on the edge of the rooftop helipad above Titan Tech, watching the Chicago skyline burn orange under a setting sun. He'd just spent 12 hours straight rewriting firewall protocols across 5 data centers. Most execs couldn't have kept up, let alone a teenager with a second-hand laptop and no formal credentials. And yet, even after saving the company a second time, the air around him still buzzed with suspicion. He pulled the encrypted phone from his pocket. 3 missed calls from Eleanor. 1 from Greg. And a single strange text, "You're in danger. They're building something behind your back. Watch your logs. G***** G, Greg." Jamal narrowed his eyes. If Greg was warning him off the record, things were worse than he thought. Downstairs, in a restricted access room beneath the main server floor, Martin DeWitt stood beside Nigel, staring into a flickering wall of surveillance footage. "He's too clean," Martin growled. "Everything we throw at him just makes him stronger." Nigel tapped the screen. "Then we frame him. If we can't discredit his past, we'll destroy his present." They had already initiated the setup. Earlier that afternoon, under the guise of maintenance, they had inserted a hidden script into one of the main security terminals, a script written in Jamal's coding style, mimicking his syntax and digital fingerprint. Once triggered, it would appear as if he had created a backdoor, giving himself control over the Titan Tech infrastructure. "Once this goes live," Nigel whispered, "the evidence will show he built himself a kill switch." Martin's eyes gleamed. "And when we leak that to the press, he'll be finished. The genius pizza boy becomes a security threat. Just another cocky hacker brought down by his own ego." At that very moment, Eleanor paced her office, furious. She hadn't seen Jamal since he'd walked out of the NOC hours earlier. She felt it, Martin and Nigel were planning something. They hadn't spoken a word to her all day. She picked up her phone and called Jamal again. No answer. Then she remembered, Jamal's security logs were still mirrored on her console. She ran a trace. Everything looked clean, until she saw it. An admin script had been inserted into the central firewall hub, under Jamal's account. Her blood turned cold. "No," she whispered. "He wouldn't." But the evidence was damning. Time stamps, code signature, and syntax. It all pointed to him. She grabbed her coat and headed for the rooftop. Meanwhile, Jamal ran his own sweep. Greg's warning kept ringing in his head. They're building something. He knew how Martin and Nigel operated. It wouldn't be enough to shut him out. They wanted a story. A downfall. A reason that made them look like heroes. And so he traced back the last 24 hours of login attempts across all admin-level systems. Deep inside the audit logs, he found it, a duplicate of his access token, used once, for 13 minutes, on Terminal 31B. The problem was, he had never been near Terminal 31B. He followed the trail. Whoever had cloned his ID had loaded a private script, just one file, rootswitch_jw13.sh. His heart sank. It wasn't just a backdoor. It was a kill command. One keystroke, and every Titan Tech client would go offline again. He stood up, grabbed his laptop, and ran. 20 minutes later, he burst into Eleanor's office. She was already there, staring at the terminal, the damning code scrolling down the screen. "I didn't write that," Jamal said breathlessly. Eleanor didn't look up. "They planned this. You know that." Jamal pointed at the hash logs. "See the timestamp? There's a mismatch. They forged my ID, but they didn't sync the internal NTP server. The signature's off by 33 seconds. She blinked. That was subtle. Too subtle for most. But not for him. She leaned over the terminal. "If we prove it." "They won't let you," Jamal cut in. "They'll bury you, same as me. We need to hit them back. Publicly." Eleanor considered. "We leak the truth." "No," Jamal said. "We let them leak the lie. And then we crush them with receipts." An hour later, the trap was sprung. Nigel stood before the board, smirking, as he unveiled the evidence, Jamal's supposed backdoor. "This child," he declared, "compromised our system. It was always his plan to hold us hostage." The board gasped. Cameras clicked. Someone had already alerted a local tech journalist. Martin added, "We recommend immediate termination of all contracts and referral to federal authorities." Then the conference room screen changed. A new face appeared, Jamal, live, streaming from the NOC. "You really should have cleaned your tracks," he said calmly. "But you forgot to spoof the hash timestamps." He pressed a button. The screen split, displaying Nigel's admin session. Terminal 31B. The forged key insertion. The backdoor script was typed, not by Jamal, but by an account registered to Nigel Harper. The room erupted. Board members shouted. Phones rang. Martin paled. "This is fake." But Greg stepped forward, holding a signed forensic report. "Confirmed by our own audit team." It was Nigel. Eleanor turned to the board. "You wanted the truth. Here it is. He saved us. And they tried to frame him." The chairman looked sick. "We'll need a full internal review." Security entered moments later. Nigel and Martin didn't fight. They just stood there, stiff, broken, exposed. As they were escorted out, Jamal ended the stream. Silence fell across the top floor. Jamal stood up from the terminal. "You still think I'm just a pizza boy?" No one dared answer. News traveled fast. By morning, the headlines were everywhere. Titan Tech execs caught framing teen cybersecurity whiz, 15-year-old outsmarts corporate giants, saves company twice, the pizza boy who cracked the code. The media couldn't get enough of it. Social feeds were ablaze with clips of Jamal's calm, cutting takedown in front of the board. Tech blogs hailed him as a prodigy. Cybersecurity experts marveled at his instincts. But inside Titan Tech's skyscraper, the mood was anything but celebratory. In the 54th floor executive war room, Eleanor stared down her bruised and battered board. Martin was gone, quietly removed after the failed frame job. Nigel, escorted out in disgrace, faced imminent legal action. Yet the scars ran deep. The company's stock had plunged 12% overnight, not because of the breach, but because the world had seen the rot inside. Eleanor stood at the head of the table, voice sharp as a blade. "You wanted to hide the truth. You nearly destroyed this company doing it." One of the older board members shifted uncomfortably. "He's still, just a kid. He shouldn't have had that kind of access." He earned it, Eleanor shot back. And saved us doing it. Another member cleared his throat. But what happens now? His presence is polarizing. Investors are nervous. Eleanor's jaw tightened. Let me worry about that. Downstairs, in the NOC, Jamal sat in front of the same terminal where he'd stopped the back door. He should have felt proud. Vindicated. But something gnawed at him. This wasn't over. The attackers had gone dark after the last purge, but Jamal could feel it. The lull was too clean. Too easy. If this was a nation-state actor, as he suspected, they wouldn't give up just because a teenager embarrassed a few corporate suits. Greg approached, coffee in hand. Hell of a show yesterday. Jamal barely nodded. It's not done. Greg pulled up a chair. You think they'll hit again? They have to. They lost access, lost leverage. They'll come harder. Smarter. Jamal's fingers tapped nervously on the desk. And now they know I'm in the way. Greg frowned. Which means you've got a target on your back. Bigger than ever. Jamal shrugged. Let them come. Later that afternoon, Eleanor found him still working. Jamal, she said quietly. I want you to take a day off. You've earned it. He looked up, surprised. You serious? She nodded. You've done more in a week than this entire team in a month. Rest. Recharge. I'll deal with the board. Jamal hesitated, then finally closed his laptop. All right. One day. He left the building quietly, hoodie up, phone in pocket. The media was already camped outside, cameras waiting to catch a glimpse of the teenage cyber hero. He slipped out the side entrance, disappearing into the Chicago streets. But not everyone missed him. In a parked car down the block, a dark-suited man spoke quietly into a burner phone. He's leaving now. Target confirmed. Moving to Phase 3. Halfway across the world, in a dimly lit room thick with cigarette smoke, a Russian voice answered in clipped English. Good. This time, no mistakes. Back inside Titan Tech, Greg ran one last sweep of the core systems. That's when he saw it, a tiny anomaly. One line of code buried deep in the edge routers, timestamped barely an hour ago. His blood ran cold. They're back, he whispered. Without wasting a second, he called Eleanor. They've launched Phase 3. And Jamal's out in the open. Eleanor's breath caught. Where is he? I don't know. Panic flickered in her chest. Then we find him. Now. Meanwhile, Jamal ducked into Pizza Heaven, hoping for a slice and a moment of peace. But Mr. Chen greeted him at the counter with a worried look. Some men came asking for you. Said they were interested in your skills. Didn't look like reporters. Jamal's pulse quickened. What did you tell them? Nothing. Told them you weren't here. Jamal pulled out his phone and scanned the street. Black sedans. Shady men in suits. His gut twisted. It wasn't over. He was the target now. And the real fight had just begun. The streets of downtown Chicago buzzed with weekend traffic, tourists crowding the sidewalks, unaware of the quiet war unfolding beneath their feet. Jamal moved swiftly, hoodie drawn, ducking through alleys and weaving past storefronts. He knew the eyes on him weren't just the media now. Something darker was at play. The men outside Pizza Heaven weren't corporate suits. They were professionals, watchers, likely hired through off-books channels. Not Martin's amateurs. Something far more serious. Jamal tapped a sequence on his cracked Android, launching an encrypted relay. Seconds later, a message flew to Greg. They're here. Not press. Not legal. Professional. Watch the net, **** back inside Titan Tech's NOC, Greg's console blinked with the message. He immediately flagged Eleanor. He's right, Greg told her. I'm seeing strange traffic, short bursts hitting random subnets. Someone's probing, mapping our internal network from the outside. Sophisticated stuff. Could be nation state. Eleanor's stomach clenched. They're escalating. He's exposed. She called Jamal's burner. 1 ring. 2. Then, yeah. Get somewhere safe. Now, she said urgently. We're seeing external recon, this isn't just a corporate grudge anymore. Already on it, Jamal replied, breathless. Tell Greg, check the CDN mirrors. They're laying breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs? Decoys. To pull us off their real target. He hung up and bolted through a back alley. At that same moment, in a dim Chicago parking garage, 3 dark-suited men adjusted comms gear, watching a live feed of Jamal's movements from a hacked security cam. Target moving west, one of them muttered. Authorization to intercept. An accented voice crackled through the earpiece, confirmed. Retrieve. No media. Meanwhile, in the Titan Tech NOC, Greg frantically traced inbound traffic. Jamal had been right, they were using decoy scans to mask a deeper push. Holy hell, Greg whispered. They're targeting our root certs. If they get those, they can impersonate anything, Eleanor finished grimly. She grabbed her phone again. No answer this time. Jamal was moving too fast. Outside, Jamal ducked into an old parking structure. He needed a place to think, regroup. His mind raced. The attackers weren't just after Titan Tech anymore, they were after him. A teenage hacker had embarrassed a state-backed operation on a global stage. They wouldn't leave him breathing to do it again. He slipped into the shadows, booted his laptop, and connected to a private mesh node. The attackers weren't just probing Titan Tech, they were trying to find him. Digital fingerprints were all over the dark web, false bounties posted, trackers seeded. Someone wanted him caught badly. Jamal's fingers flew across the keyboard. He crafted a spoof relay, then another, scattering digital decoys across 3 continents. If they followed his trail, they'd chase phantoms through Amsterdam, Cape Town, and Seoul. But time was running out. In the Titan Tech executive suite, Eleanor faced a full board session, half of them demanding answers, the other half terrified of what was coming next. Your rogue consultant has put us all at risk, one elder board member snapped. We should have cut him loose after the last incident. Then the company would already be in ruins, Eleanor shot back. He's the only reason we're still standing. Another member frowned. And now? With foreign actors hunting him, and us? We protect him, Eleanor said firmly. And we finish this fight. Just then, Greg burst in, pale and breathless. They've triggered something big. State-level intrusion signatures. This isn't a backdoor anymore, it's a coup attempt. They want Titan Tech as infrastructure for themselves. The board gasped. Eleanor turned to Greg. Where's Jamal? Off-grid. But I traced one of his decoys, he's in the West Loop somewhere. She grabbed her coat. I'm going to find him. Outside, black sedans prowled the streets, agents scanning for their target. In the shadows of the parking structure, Jamal watched them through a cracked mirror. They're close, he muttered to himself. Too close. His laptop pinged. An encrypted message from Greg, Root Cert Attack Live. We're exposed. Need you, ****. Jamal's pulse quickened. There was no time for hiding anymore. He stood, packed his gear, and prepared to move. If they wanted a war, he would give them one. But this time, it would be on his terms. The sun had long since dipped below the Chicago skyline when Eleanor's black sedan screeched to a stop near the abandoned parking structure in the West Loop. She scanned the shadowy entrances, her heart pounding. She wasn't supposed to be out here, security had warned her not to risk it, but Eleanor Travers never stood by when it mattered most. Her phone buzzed. An encrypted message from Greg, Cert Attack intensifying. We're minutes away from losing control. If Jamal can't stop it, we're finished, asterisk asterisk. She stepped into the gloom, calling softly. Jamal. No answer. But in the darkness above, Jamal watched her from an overhead beam. He'd seen the sedans prowling, heard the foreign chatter on hijacked frequencies. And now Eleanor herself was here, a risky move, but one that spoke volumes. He dropped silently to the floor behind her. You shouldn't have come alone. Eleanor spun, relief flooding her face. You're all right. For now. Jamal's voice was calm but urgent. They're moving fast. Targeting your root certs, trying to take your entire digital identity. If they succeed, they can impersonate any Titan Tech service, banking systems, defense clients, the whole network. I know. Eleanor met his gaze. Greg says we have minutes. Jamal opened his laptop. I'll need access. Direct. No proxies. We're going to flip this on them. Together, they sprinted back to the sedan. Eleanor gunned the engine, racing through side streets as Jamal typed furiously beside her, rerouting traffic, planting countermeasures, building a digital trap. You've been tracking them, she said, eyes on the road. Jamal nodded. They're using relay chains through compromised nodes. But they got greedy. Pushed too hard on the CERT attack. I can trace the origin. Eleanor's heart skipped. To whom? To them, Jamal said grimly. The ones really behind this. By the time they reached Titan Tech's underground server vault, Greg was waiting, pale and sweating. We're losing control, he gasped. 5 root servers already under attack. Jamal slid into the master terminal. His fingers flew. Initiating counterinfiltration. Let them think they're winning. Greg leaned in. You're baiting them? Exactly. Across the network, Jamal's trap sprang to life. He allowed the attackers to breach a decoy CERT vault, a virtual honeypot rigged with trace routines. On the central screen, a map appeared. One by one, the hostile nodes lit up, traced to servers in Belarus, then back through Russian intelligence networks. Greg's eyes widened. It's them. Eleanor's jaw set. We needed proof. Now we have it. But the enemy wasn't retreating. Sensing the trap, they doubled down, launching massive denial-of-service waves, trying to flood Titan Tech's defenses. Jamal worked faster, sweat beading on his forehead. Almost there. Suddenly, the lights flickered, power surges. The attackers were now hitting physical infrastructure, attempting to force a shutdown. Greg shouted, if we lose power, hold. Jamal snapped. One final keystroke. The map on the main screen shifted. Countertrace complete. Enemy origin verified. Attack sequence terminated, asterisk asterisk across Titan Tech's network, the hostile signals vanished. Screens flashed green. The surge halted. The company's lifeblood, its digital core, stood firm. The NOC erupted in cheers. Engineers who had doubted Jamal only days ago were now clapping, shouting his name. Greg turned, voice thick. Kid, you just saved the entire company. Eleanor stepped forward. Not just the company. The clients. The nation. All of it. But Jamal's expression stayed calm. They'll be back. Different faces, different tactics. You need better systems. Better people. He looked her in the eye. People who don't underestimate others because of their age. Or their skin. Eleanor's voice was steady. That changes. Starting today. Word spread fast. Within hours, the truth was everywhere, not just about the foreign attack, but about the 15-year-old who stopped it. The board had no choice. Under pressure from public outcry and industry leaders, they issued a full statement. Titan Tech formally recognizes Jamal Watson as lead cybersecurity consultant, not honorary. Not temporary. Lead. The next morning, Jamal walked into Titan Tech HQ, not as a pizza boy, but as a professional, hoodie and all. No more whispers. No more sneers. Just respect. As he passed the executive floor, he caught Eleanor's eye. She smiled slightly. "Well, Mr. Watson," she said, "ready to show them what you can do?" Jamal grinned. "Always." And as the glass doors slid shut behind him, one thing was clear: this was only the beginning. Dear friend, this story reminds us, talent, courage, and brilliance can come from anyone, no matter their age, their background, or their title. Let's build a world where we value skill over status, and fairness over ego. If this story moved you, please like this video and subscribe to this channel, because every voice matters, and we'll keep bringing you stories that prove it.